This white woman commented on a video that I just posted this morning about digital blackface and how a lot of white creators use black music in order to boost their platform or whatever the case may be, but they're not actually down for black people. And she commented and she said something along the lines of, give it up, stop talking about this, give it a rest. You're starting to look as bad as racist white people. And okay, have any of you ever been in an abusive relationship? If you haven't, that's fine. Just sit down and listen. But have any of you ever been in an abusive relationship where the moment that you call out the abuser on some shit that they're doing, they turn around and say that you're the abuser? Or they say something like, you're just like my ex who took me for granted. And that's their way of deflecting because they know what you're saying is true. But their ego is so fragile that any type of accountability feels like an attack. And it's so funny because when I'm on this app talking about men and how they need to be held accountable, and we can all collectively come together and say that it pisses us off when men say, not all men. We can all collectively come together and say it pisses us off when men tell us to shut up and stop nagging. But then when I say, okay, white women, let's take it a step further. Here's some ways that you guys also can improve. Then all of a sudden it's not all white people. You need to give it a rest already. You're just as bad as the racist white people you're talking about. And one white woman the other day commented and said that now she's experiencing racism. Now, those of you who are mature and you want to grow and you want to learn, you're going to sit through those uncomfortable moments and receive the feedback and improve and move forward accordingly. But those of you who are fragile, who have not come to terms with the fact that racism is deeply embedded into your very DNA, whether you don't, I don't care. I don't use the N-word, or I'm not a member of the KKK and I don't burn crosses. That doesn't mean that you're not racist still. It's kind of like when we talk about abusive relationships with men and people assume that if you weren't physically abused, that it's not abuse at all. Racism can come in the form of how you react when you see a black man walking towards you. Racism can show up in the form of you assuming that black people talk and all act the same way. Racism can show up in the fact of me simply having a discussion with you and you try to police my tone by thinking that I'm angry and aggressive and I'm literally just talking to you like this. Racism can be in the form of you feeling some type of way if your daughter or son brings home a black person. Racism can also show in the form of you not wanting to hear black people talk about the things that they deal with on a daily basis. Racism can also show in the fact that black people are simply voicing their concerns and you're telling us to stop talking about it. It's not that big a deal. Racism doesn't exist. I'm not racist, so it means that racism isn't real. So I know this isn't going to happen across the board, so you don't need to comment and say, unfortunately, sadly, white people aren't going to listen. Girl, shut up. But for the very few, the very pinch of white people who are actually listening, and not just saying I'm listening and learning, but you're actively doing the work, you will sit in that uncomfortableness and let it simmer and let it marinate. And you will move accordingly, differently than you have prior to. You are able to say, you know what? I understand that racism is deeply embedded into white culture. That is white culture, racism. When you can take ownership of that, then you will be able to improve. But until that point, you're going to say shit like the woman who just made that comment on my post.